Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Sailing. Admiral the Black Dragon, Concubine from Momousagi. Chapter 61. On the warship. At this time, the warship had already set off, heading towards the 16th branch. Seeing Makino's sad look, Eric persuaded him gently. Makino, the branch is not far from here, you can come back anytime. Okay, Makino said with some embarrassment. Thank you, Colonel Eric, for showing you a joke. Eric smiled and said, you are only 1 year older than me, we are all young people, so there is no need to be so polite, just call me by my name. Is this okay? Will it not respect you enough? Makino is a very gentle woman, very particular about etiquette. Eric smiled, no, I won't get used to it if you are too polite. Makino said in a low voice, shyly, then I will listen to you. That's right. There was a dangerous light in Eric's eyes, and he whispered softly, Makino, let's sit inside for a while, and I'll talk to you about opening a tavern. Makino didn't think too much, and believed in the man in front of him. She said with a gentle smile, I'm really bothering you and wasting your time. Eric praised, Makino, you are such a polite woman. After finishing speaking, he walked towards the room. A picture flashed in my mind. Makino taught Ace to learn etiquette, and a very funny joke was made as a result. What a lady, Eric muttered secretly, very satisfied in his heart. Soon, Eric opened the wooden door and walked in. After Makino entered, he closed the door behind him. Eric smiled strangely, took a step, and hugged Makino in his arms. Ah! Makino let out a cry, startled. Eric leaned on Makino's back and said affectionately, Makino, you are a very special girl. From the first moment I saw you, I knew you were the one I've been looking for. Makino's head was buzzing, he was so nervous, he said in fear, Eric, what are you doing, can you let me go first? Eric whispered softly, Makino, do you believe in fate? I don't know. Makino is in a mess now, he can't think, he said in a low voice. Eric said affectionately, Makino, you know, although I saw you for the first time, in my memory, I seem to have seen you before. This is a very strange feeling. And I am 17 years old and you are 18 years old. We can be said to be the same age. This is the best arrangement from God. After speaking, Makino was gently hugged. Oh! Makino exclaimed, glanced at Eric's face, then quickly looked away, and said nervously, please let me down. Eric looked down at her. His eyes were full of affection, and he said gently, Makino, I will treat you well in this life, never leave, never beat you or scold you, hold you in the palm of my hand, and take good care of you. Quote. Makino didn't dare to look at Eric, and said in a low voice, Eric, I believe you. Then, Eric put her down gently. Do you know, I bought a lot of posters in my previous life, and your posters bought the most. Pirate fans like you very much, you are so gentle, so kind, and you are very popular. If you want to choose the most popular female character of pirates, you must be one of them. Really Makino, you are the most gentle woman in anime, the most typical good wife and loving mother. I really liked you in my previous life. Makino's mind went blank, and he murmured, Eric, I don't know what you're talking about, it hurts. Eric looked up at the ceiling, smiled all over his face, and said with a big laugh, it's finally come true. The fetters of the previous life have all become reality at this moment. If you let the pirate fans know that you have become my woman, I'm afraid they will be envious of them. After all, no matter how much pirate fans like you, they can only search for your photos on the internet, or buy some posters, and then start the plane to take off. As for me, not only can I hold you, but I can even do whatever I want, what a wonderful thing it is. Sure enough, time travel is the best choice. Whether it's Hina, Belle Mel, or you, they are all so gentle and pleasant. It's worth it, this life is really worth it, I don't have any regrets, ha ha ha. Makino's mind was too empty, and he whispered softly, take it easy. I don't know how long it has been. Everything finally quieted down. Eric lit a cigarette, smiled, and was very happy. Leaning on his shoulder, Makino said angrily, you bad guy, it's broad daylight now. Eric took a puff of cigarette, and said affectionately, Makino, I will be responsible for you, you are the person I love the most in this life. Makino hummed, with a look of happiness on his pretty face. Immediately afterwards, he sighed and said helplessly, Honey, your combat power is too strong, and I'm just a common person. If this continues, my body will be ruined. Why don't you find more women? I'm really afraid of you. Hearing this, Eric laughed out loud, overjoyed. Any man will be very proud when he hears his woman say such words. Eric said in a soft voice, "Don't worry, I will find a suitable devil fruit in the future, and your combat power will increase by then, don't be afraid." That's good, or I really can't stand it. Makino rubbed Eric's shoulder, and smiled gently, extremely beautiful. Eric stroked her hair and said softly, "Honey, you are my woman now, do you want to continue to open the tavern?" Makino thought for a while, then smiled and said, "I've been running a tavern since I was a child, and I really like this job. Honey, just let me keep running the tavern, okay?" After finishing speaking, he shook Eric's handwriting. His voice was gentle, sweet, and very nice. Eric smiled slightly. "Since you are interested in this, I will definitely not stop it. I will arrange it for you when you return to the branch." "Well, I knew you were the best for me." With a happy smile on Makino's pretty face, he pecked Eric on the cheek. Eric smiled, "I'll walk with you in my arms later." "Don't want." Without even thinking about it, Makino quickly said, "I can walk by myself, no need." "Eric, are you afraid of being seen?" "Sure enough, you are still so shy." Makino blushed and said, "Honey, if you walk with me in your arms, I won't be used to it, so I'll do it myself." Not long after, the warship slowly approached the shore. Eric looked at Makino and said gently, "Let's walk slowly, if you feel pain, you must tell me." Makino nodded slightly, and shyly said, "I see, don't say this, okay, it's not good to be heard." Eric smiled and walked slowly, just like taking a walk. Makino walked lightly and followed carefully. On the way, when the residents saw Eric, they were naturally very respectful, and they all paid attention. "Colonel Eric, see this scene," Makino secretly said with emotion. "Eric is indeed my man, he is really excellent, and everyone respects him so much, which shows that he is really doing things for the people." At this moment, Makino's love for Eric rose to ultimate, and he belonged to Eric wholeheartedly. She was very grateful to God for sending such a perfect man as Eric to her, and her heart was filled with happiness. Branch 16, Unit Dormitory, 2nd floor. "Honey, do I live on the 2nd floor?" Makino blinked his eyes wide and looked around, full of interest. It was the first time she saw Marine's dormitory, and she was very curious. Eric smiled slightly, and said warmly, "Just live on the 2nd floor, so you don't have to climb the stairs." The two came to the end of the corridor. Eric knocked on the door. "Knock knock." Coming. Inside the room, Belmel's voice came. "Female." Makino's eyes flashed, and he guessed in his heart that the person inside was also Eric's woman. She has no objection to this at all. Eric is really too strong. She is not an opponent at all, and can only be forced to accept this fact without any complaints. At this time, with a creak, the wooden door slowly opened. Belmel saw Eric, smiled sweetly and said, "Honey, you're back." Eric nodded, and said softly, "Belmel, let me introduce you, this is Makino, she is also my woman, a very gentle girl." Immediately, the two women looked at each other. Belle took Makino's little hand and said with a smile, "Makino, you are so beautiful, and you look very kind and gentle, you are such a good girl." Makino was a little shy, and quickly said, "Sister Belle, you look beautiful, you have such a good figure." Eric laughed, and said triumphantly, "You don't need to flatter each other, the woman Eric is looking for has absolutely no problem in terms of appearance and morality." After finishing speaking, I hugged Belmel on the left and Makino on the right, a real hug from the left to the right. In the previous life, this scene can only be my own fantasy, but everything has become a reality. Great, if I can connect to the internet now, and I can send photos to the Earth, I will show all pirate fans how awesome I am. Unfortunately, all of this is destined to be impossible. I can't even pretend to pretend, what a pity. Eric was full of emotions, and he started talking to himself, his face full of pride and complacency. Belle leaned on Eric's shoulder and asked strangely, "Honey, I found that you like to say some inexplicable things, I can't even understand what you are saying." Makino also leaned on Eric's shoulder and said with a smile, "Yeah, it's so mysterious that I can't understand what I'm saying." Eric pecked on the left and right, and said with a smile on his face, "You don't need to know what to say, I'm happy anyway. You two are the women I love the most. I will protect you all my life and prevent you from any harm. Belle, Makino, we're going to be together forever, and you're going to be the best sisters, close, you know." Heard the words, Belle Meyer said with a sweet smile, "Honey, don't worry, no matter how many women you have in the future, I will get along with them well, and I won't make any noise." Holding Makino's little hand, he said gently, "From now on, you will be my sister, and we will be a family." Makino smiled knowingly, and said softly, "Well, from now on, you will be my older sister." Eric smelled the fragrance of his hair, looked up at the ceiling, and secretly sighed, "I have no regrets at this point in my life, and I am the biggest winner, ha ha ha. Makino, take a good rest, I'm going to work first." Eric stroked her hair and said softly. Makino smiled sweetly, "You go, I'll talk to Sister Belle." Belle Mel was very gentle, helped Eric tidy up his clothes, and praised, "Honey, I find you are really handsome, especially in military uniform, you are really handsome." Makino echoed, "It's true, Eric is the most handsome person I've ever met." Eric smiled heartily, and said in a happy mood, "Okay, you guys have a good rest, I will go to work first." After speaking, he strode towards the door. The two women looked at his stalwart back, their eyes were full of love and affection. Belmo murmured, "He is really excellent, he is the most powerful young man in the world. I love you, dear Eric." Belle smiled unconsciously, full of happiness, she really liked Eric, to the bottom of her heart. Makino is gentle and generous, and said with a smile, "Became a colonel at the age of 17, and he is so handsome, gentle and polite, Eric is indeed perfect, without any shortcomings, he is the best man in the world." Quote. Then, the two of them started whispering, praising their man constantly. After a while, Belle Mel brought out a plate of fruit, and said with a slight smile, "Come on, let's eat some fruit." Okay. Makino carefully sat on the chair, and the lady ate the fruit. Belmel asked curiously, "Sister, did Eric arrange a job for you?" Makino shook his head slightly, "Sister, I have been running a tavern since I was a child. This is my interest and hobby. I want to continue to open a tavern here in the branch," and Eric agreed. Belle Mel thought for a while, and suggested, "Sister, Eric is very ambitious. I believe he will sit in a high position in the future, so I will do everything I can to help him. Sister, if possible, I hope you don't open a tavern anymore. Helping our men is the most important thing." Heard the words, Makino was lost in thought, and said with a wry smile, "Sister, but besides opening a tavern, I don't know anything else, and I can't help Eric at all." Belle gave her a blank look, and said angrily, "What are you talking about? If you want to help Eric, it's not easy, cooking and washing clothes, these are all. After Eric gets off work, every time he returns to the dormitory, he can eat delicious food. He will definitely be very happy. If you go to run the tavern, and I have to help beside Eric, then no one will cook for him, and he can only eat the food in the cafeteria. I don't think it's very good." Belle Mel said softly, "Sister, I hope you think about it carefully. He is our man and everything to us. It is normal to make some sacrifices for him." Immediately, Makino struggled, thought for a while, and then sighed and said, "Sister, you are right, I really can't do things on my own, and I should think about it for Eric. Then I won't open the tavern, and I will take care of the housework in the future." Makino smiled gently. "Every time Eric comes back, he can have a hot meal. This is what I should do." Belle held her little hand and said happily, "Sister, it's great if you think so. In the future, we will work together to help Eric as much as possible, so that he has no worries and can devote himself to work wholeheartedly." Belle Meyer said firmly, "For him, I am willing to do anything." Makino nodded solemnly, "Don't worry, sister, I will take care of the housework and won't distract him." 5:30 in the afternoon. Eric walked out of the office and walked to the dormitory building. At this time, it is the peak time to get off work. When the soldiers saw Eric, they all shouted, "Colonel Eric." Along the way, Eric nodded from time to time, responding to the soldiers. This is the benefit of power, which makes people admire and worship. Soon, Eric came to the dormitory. When Nami saw it, he quickly smiled and said, "Eric is back, and we can finally have dinner." Nuo Chigao followed suit and said, Eric big brother, you are back. Eric touched their little heads, and said warmly, you two little guys, why do you look so happy? Nuo Chigao said with a smile, because Makino's sister, I really like Makino's sister, she is so gentle. Nami clapped her little hands and said, Sister Makino is really gentle, even gentler than Belle and Mel Aunt. I also like her very much. Ha ha ha, Eric laughed, feeling very good. At this moment, Makino came out with the food, and said with a gentle smile, Eric, wash your hands, and you can start the meal. Eric glanced at her, dressed in white skirt, gentle and dignified, looking like a good wife and mother. Sure enough, among the pirates, the most suitable woman to be a wife is Makino, the favorite of all men. Eric muttered secretly, and went to wash his hands. Not for a while. The five of them sat down and began to eat. Nami took a bite, widened his eyes, and exclaimed, wow, it's delicious. Nuo Chigao looked at Makino and praised, it's delicious, Sister Makino, you are really amazing. Makino smiled, if you like to eat, then eat more. Eric also took a sip, nodded, and said with a smile, Makino, your craftsmanship is indeed very good. I really want to eat such delicious meals every day. Honey, your idea can come true. Belle Mel said with a smile. Eric's eyes flickered, he let out an "oh," looked at Makino and asked, are you going to give up opening the tavern? Makino said with a gentle smile, Eric, I thought about it seriously, and I still won't open a tavern, and I will help you take care of the housework in the future. Hearing this, Eric said softly, I know you did this for me, and it's hard for you. Makino shook his head lightly, and said with a smile, no, I'm also very happy to be able to cook for you. At this time, Nami's eyes lit up, and she said with a smile, okay, so I can eat delicious food every day. Nuo Chigao also said, yes, I must eat such a delicious food every day, and I will die if I don't eat it for a day. Hearing what these two little guys said, the three couldn't help laughing, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. Come on, eat more. Eric gave Makino and Belle Mel some food respectively. This move made them both very happy. They felt Eric's tenderness and thoughtfulness, and felt more and more that they were with the right person, and they loved Eric to the extreme. Seeing how moved the two women were, Eric was very proud. He was very happy that such a big effect could be achieved with a little trick. What about me? At this time, Nami was not happy and started chirping. Nuo Chigao hurriedly said, there's me and me. Eric laughed, I forgot about you two little guys. After finishing speaking, they each picked up some food for the two of them. Nami smiled and said, that's right. Nuo Chigao. Thank you Eric big brother. Not long after, everyone had dinner. Makino and Belle Mel, the two went to wash the dishes, laughing and laughing. Eric silently lit a cigarette, liking this kind of life very much, very comfortable. 11 o'clock at night, Nami and Nuo Chigao have returned to their dormitory and turned off the lights to sleep. And Eric, of course, stayed in Belle Mel's dormitory. At this time, the lights here also went out. Eric sighed, the room is too small, it seems that we still have to buy a house. Bellmeyer agreed, yeah, it's really inconvenient to stay here in the dormitory all the time. Makino said softly, honey, I have opened a tavern these years, and I have saved some money, which just happens to be used to buy a house. Eric smiled, and said lightly, you are my wife, how can I use your money? I don't eat soft food. Wife. Makino was a little puzzled. Belle Mel then said, I don't understand either, this is the first time I've heard this word. Eric explained, wife, honey, it actually means the same thing. I call you wives, but you can call me husband. Wife and husband are a couple. Heard the words. Both of them felt very novel and tried to shout. Husband. Eric laughed, yes, that's it. Both Belle and Makino felt very interesting and called several times in a row. After a while, Bellmeyer asked, husband, although you are a colonel, your salary is not high, right? Is the money enough to buy a house? I think what Makino said is right, you should take it with her first. Anyway, we are both husband and wife, and there is no distinction between each other. As for me, all the money I earned over the years was used to support Nami and Nuo Chigao. I have no money at all. I can't help you husband. I'm sorry. The tone was full of shame, very guilty. Eric patted her on the back, and said softly, "What are you talking about? Buying a house should be borne by men. It is true that my salary is not high enough, but if I want to make money, it is very simple for me." Makino quickly persuaded. "Honey, it's better to use my money, don't use your power, that's not good." Belmo followed up. "Yeah, our money has to be clean so you don't leave a stain." Eric smiled and said, "What are you talking about? How could I use power for personal gain? I really don't bother to do such things. I can deprive the devil fruit and go back to find a few pirates who ate the devil fruit. As long as I deprive the devil fruit and sell it, making money is not an easy task." Makino said in surprise, "Honey, you can deprive devil fruit?" Bellmeyer said excitedly, "If this is the case, that would be great. On the one hand, you can kill pirates, and on the other hand, you can earn a lot of Baileys. This is the best of both worlds." Eric said calmly, "So, you two don't have to worry. In terms of money, it's a small problem. Okay, it's getting late, go to bed early. Honey, good night." Belmo and Makino said in unison, "Good night, go to sleep." Eric said with a smile, thinking to himself, "Makino is such a lovely person. He even gave me his private money. He really is a good wife and mother, and a lady of everyone." 5:30 in the morning. Makino woke up and was going to make breakfast. Hearing the movement, Eric also woke up, and asked softly, "Honey, what are you doing up so early?" Makino said embarrassedly, "Husband, did you wake up?" "It's fine, but what are you doing up so early?" Eric asked again. Makino smiled gently. "Sister said, you have to go to training early in the morning, I'll get up and make you some breakfast." Eric waved his hand and said with a smile, "No need, I'll just eat something in the cafeteria then, you can lie down and sleep." "Husband, I want to make breakfast for you by myself. Go to sleep, I'll go to work first." After Makino finished speaking, he hurried to make breakfast. With a wife like this, what more can a husband ask for? Eric sighed secretly, then got up to dress and wash. Makino said softly, "Honey, are you going to practice so early?" Eric smiled and said, "I'll train for a while, and I'll come back for breakfast later." After finishing speaking, there was a whoosh, and the person disappeared in place. "Is this the space fruit my sister mentioned? It's amazing." Makino exclaimed, admired Eric more and more, and continued to work. 6:10 in the morning. Training course. Eric was hitting the sandbag. Suddenly, a clear voice came. "Master Eric, you are so early." Kuina came over, very surprised. Zoro said loudly, "Tomorrow I will wake up earlier, I will work harder than Eric." At this moment, Zoro was really hit. Eric is not only stronger than him, but also harder than him, which is unacceptable to Zoro. "You are here, do you need my guidance?" Eric stopped and asked with a smile. Kuina respectfully said, "Not yet, if there is any problem, we will ask you again." Eric nodded, "Then let's start practicing." 7 in the morning. At this time, Koshiro has been here for a while and is working hard on hockey. Eric stopped practicing, and with a whoosh, he traveled through the space. Kuina happened to see this scene, and said in shock, "Master Eric, you just disappeared." "What?" Zoro was taken aback, and looked around quickly, but there was no one in sight. Koshiro said in surprise, "I can't feel his moving track at all, is it a shuttle space?" Kuina couldn't believe it and said, "Father, you mean, Master Eric ate the space fruit?" Koshiro was surprised. "It must be, otherwise it would be impossible to have such a speed. Space fruit, it's too scary, this Eric is really too strong." Dormitory. At this time, Belle-Mel had already woken up. As for Nami and Nuo Chigao, they are still sleeping. Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in the space, and Eric's figure appeared. "You are back," Makino said softly, "Honey, wash your hands and you can eat breakfast." Eric nodded, smiled and said, "It's very fragrant, and it tastes delicious just by smelling it." After speaking, I went to wash my hands. Bellmeyer touched the place where Eric appeared just now, and sighed, "The fruit of space is really amazing, there is no trace left at all." Makino smiled and said, "You wash your hands too, and you are going to eat breakfast." It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Branch 16, inside the office. Eric stood by the window, looking up at the blue sky white cloud. "Investigate the people's sentiments, and the curtain will come to an end here. In the morning, he took Belmel to conduct research in other towns again. Because there are no memorable characters in these towns, Eric just went through the motions and didn't spend much time at all. At this time, knock knock knock, come in. Eric turned his back to the door and said something lightly. Master Eric, here I come. Deja bowed, humble and respectful. Hearing this, Eric turned around slowly, and said with a smile, Dea, I hope for the stars and the moon, and I finally waited for you. Dea said embarrassingly, Master Eric, it's the subordinate's problem. I should have come here earlier. Eric patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, Okay, we are old acquaintances, so there is no need to be so polite. Come on, sit down and talk. Yes. After the two sat down, Eric took out his cigarette. Seeing this, Dea said quickly, Master Eric, I'll come. After all, he quickly took out his cigarette. Eric smiled and said, Okay, smoke mine. Dea handed over the cigarette with both hands, respectfully said, Yes. Eric was very satisfied with his attitude. After taking a puff of cigarette, he said lightly, Dea, you are a talent. If you keep working as an assistant, you will be too inferior, and there is no room for promotion. How about this? I will promote you to Lieutenant Junior grade first, and then I will hand over the financial management to you. Snapped. Dea stood up, stood at attention and saluted, and said respectfully, Colonel Eric, I promise I won't let you down. Eric waved his hand, sit down, don't mess with those who have and what don't. Dea smiled and sat down quickly. Eric took a breath and said calmly, You will give me a list of the pirates who ate devil fruit in the East Blue area later. Yes. Although Dea was puzzled, he quickly agreed. 5:10 in the afternoon. Dea handed a notebook to Eric, and said respectfully, Master Colonel, this is the East Blue area, all pirates. Eric flipped through it casually, and said with a smile, Good job. Dea breathed a sigh of relief, and quickly asked, Master Colonel, what do you want this list for? Eric said calmly, My dark fruit can deprive the devil fruit of the ability user, now you know the reason. What? Dea exclaimed and couldn't believe it. Master Colonel, your dark fruit is so powerful. Eric nodded, the reason why the department attaches so much importance to me is largely because of this. So amazing. Deja widened her eyes and muttered to herself. 9 in the morning. Inside the office, Eric looked at the list of pirates and chose who to attack. Name, Gref, male, 38 years old, Zone Ant Fruit ability. Name, Gaida, male, 27 years old, Zone Mantis Fruit ability. After all, East Blue is the weakest sea area in the 4 seas, so the number of people on the list is naturally not many. Soon, Eric turned to the last page. Name, Kurumbat, male, 43 years old, the fruit ability is related to time. According to him, he is a person with the time fruit ability. The specific authenticity needs to be verified. Time fruit. Eric's eyes flashed and he began to think. Died in Wanokuni in 1500 during Tianyu time. It's 1507 and it's entirely possible that the time fruit appears in East Blue. Must check it out. Eric came next door, here is Belmel's office. At this time, this beautiful woman was processing the documents with her head down, very serious and focused. It's a good wife. Eric secretly sighed, then said with a smile, Belmel, I'm going to start hunting ability users, and if there's anything else, you can call me later. Belmeyer quickly raised his head, stood up and said, Are you going now? Eric nodded slightly, smiling. You have to be careful, you know. Belmel is affectionate and her voice is extremely gentle. Don't worry, I'll go back as soon as I go. As soon as the voice fell, Eric disappeared instantly in place with a whoosh. Belmeyer blinked her beautiful eyes, and murmured with a smile, It seems that you can move out soon. I was in a very happy mood, and continued to process the documents, carefully correcting them. East Blue, Taiyaki Village. At this time, in the forest outside, a middle-aged man was practicing. Kurumbat is tall and thin, with a gloomy look on his face, which looks a little sick. It's coming soon, in a few days, Laozi will definitely be able to travel to the future. The time fruit is too strong, Laozi will definitely become the strongest person after getting this devil fruit, ha ha ha. He laughed alone there, unaware that someone in the tree was staring at him. Eric put his arms around his body and looked down at Kurumbat. Seeing the blue and white light emanating from this guy, Eric had a smile on his face. Sure enough, it is the fruit of time. When Tianyushi activated his ability, it also showed such light. Eric didn't hesitate any longer, and glanced around to make sure there was no one there. His eyes froze. In an instant, the Conqueror's haki radiated out, heading straight for Kurumbat. Well, the guy didn't have time to scream, and fell to the ground, fainting. Eric jumped from the tree and landed in front of him. Let's take it away here. The fruit of time is my trump card. I must not let anyone know. The fruit of the space was deliberately exposed by him to increase his bargaining chips and get more attention from Marine's senior management. But if a time fruit is added, it will definitely make the 5 elders afraid, and it is absolutely impossible to become an admiral. The trees are beautiful in the forest, and the wind will destroy them. If you are a genius, the higher-ups can tolerate it, but if you behave too monstrously, this is what the higher-ups don't want to see, and they will definitely kill him. Let's start. Eric squatted down, holding the apple in his right hand, and his left hand instantly turned into a hand of darkness, and placed it on Kurumbat. Suddenly, the darkness continued to spread, wrapping Kurumbat's whole body, turning him into a dark man. Fish, fish, fish. Ho 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 ho. A crisp sound sounded, and Kurumbat kept making strange sounds, as if a demon was roaring. No matter what kind of demon you are, you will die in front of dark fruit. Eric's eyes turned cold, and he praised the dark calendar with all his strength. Boom. A low-pitched sonic boom came from Kurumbat, and the apple in his hand gradually turned blue and white, and a strange spiral pattern appeared. Sure enough, it is the fruit of time, exactly the same as the photo on the illustration book. Eric smiled and took his hands away from Kurumbat. At this time, the guy was still in a coma and did not die. It can be seen from this that depriving the devil fruit of the ability will not cause the opponent to fall. Eric didn't hesitate, and started eating. Ix. Male Gobi, this is the 4th time I feel so uncomfortable, grass. Eric cursed, with an ugly look on his face. Immediately afterwards, he slowly closed his eyes, showing a satisfied expression. Time. I feel the flow of time, it seems that I can see through the past and the future, it's really a wonderful feeling, ha ha ha. Eric spread his hands and looked up to the sky and laughed. Dark fruit, phantom beast bat fruit, space fruit, and time fruit, now I am not afraid of anyone. The most important thing is that there is no sense of saturation yet, I can continue to devour devil fruit, thunder fruit, shock fruit, these two must not be missed. Eric was satisfied, like drinking Sprite from 1982, the smile on his face never disappeared. Then, he picked up Kurumbat and started hunting for the next ability user. Zone Ant Fruit Abilities. Zone Mantis Fruit Ability User. Zone Python Fruit Ability User. Because of the space fruit, Eric traveled through the space directly, and it didn't take much time at all, and he took down one by one. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Branch 16, in front of the office building. Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in the space, and Eric's figure appeared. At this time, 5 capable users were tied to his hands, all of them fell into a coma. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Oh my god, why did the colonel suddenly appear? It's so fast, I didn't even see the colonel's movement track at all. Look, isn't that the pirate Kurumbat? And that one, the big pirate guy, who seems to be a mantis fruit capable. These 5 people are all pirates, and they all ate devil fruit. Master Colonel actually caught 5 big pirates, my god, it's so awesome. It exploded. Master Colonel. At this time, Kuina, Bell and others, after hearing the movement, all came here. Dea said respectfully, Colonel Eric, you went out and caught 5 big pirates and came back. I admire you so much. Bell Meyer exclaimed, it's amazing, amazing skills. Kuina was very surprised, and murmured, Master Eric, you are really strong, I have never seen such a strong man. Zoro said with a serious face, one day, I must become a man like him. Eric is the goal I pursue all my life. Koshiro looked at Eric and sighed, with such a huge blow, the pirates in East Blue will all be terrified and never dare to go out to sea as pirates again. And all of this is due to this man. At this time, Eric glanced at the crowd, and said in a deep voice, now the sea is turbulent, the number of pirates is increasing day by day, and the lives of the common people are greatly threatened. As Colonel Marine, I have the duty to kill the evil pirates as much as possible and protect everyone's life and property. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, in the 16th branch, the 5 of them will be publicly tried. I will make all the pirates in East Blue feel terrified and never dare to do evil again. Suddenly, the audience was in an uproar. Great, these pirates deserve to die. Colonel Eric, we will always support you. Good hockey. I rub it, my blood boils when I hear it. With Lord Eric here, all the pirates will die, quack quack. Dea said respectfully. Master Eric, don't worry, I will definitely spread this news as much as possible. Belmo looked at Eric, her beautiful eyes sparkled, and she said to herself, as expected of my man, he is so handsome, I really want to be held in your arms, husband. Kuina showed admiration on her small face, and murmured, Master Eric, you are really amazing. Zoro followed, he has strength and courage, he is really a terrifying person. Koshiro said gently, as long as there is a public trial, the pirates will definitely be shocked, and the number will drop sharply. This is his political achievement, and I believe he will be promoted soon. 5:30 in the afternoon. Eric and Belmo went back to the dormitory. As soon as Nami saw Eric, he smiled and said, tomorrow the pirates will be judged, I will go to see it. Nuo Chigao followed and said, I'll go too. Eric smiled slightly, you all know, the news is very well informed. That's not true. Nami raised her small head with a proud expression on her face. Wearing an apron, Makino came out with food, and said gently, wash your hands, you can eat it. Eric nodded and smiled knowingly. The appearance of Makino wearing an apron is really very beautiful, and Eric likes it very much. This temperament of a good wife and loving mother is the most attractive. After a while, the 5 of them sat down to eat. Makino smiled and said, honey, I heard that the pirates will be put on trial tomorrow, can I go and see? Eric, of course, it's at the training ground. 1 inch. Bellmeyer said with a smile, when the trial is over, the pirates will be frightened. There will definitely be a lot fewer people who want to be pirates. This is a great credit, and it will be of great help to my husband's future promotion. Eric smiled and said, you're right, that's why I want to have a public trial. I want the high-level officials to see my achievements. At the same time, in the surrounding villages, countless people were discussing Eric. Tomorrow, I will go to the 16th branch, there is a good show to be staged. What show? Master Eric has captured 5 big pirates, and tomorrow there will be a public trial. What? Is Colonel Eric so powerful? Nonsense, it's more than powerful, Mr. Eric is a godlike existence. With Mr. Eric, we don't have to worry anymore, the pirates will be wiped out. Thank you Colonel Eric, I wish you a smooth life. I hang a longevity card at home, and pray to Lord Eric every day, such a good person should live a long life. West Rob Village. Inside the mansion, Meister sighed and said, Colonel Eric, the action is really too fast. This has taken down 5 big pirates, and they are all capable. Lulia nodded, admiringly said, he really kept his word, he will definitely deprive the devil fruit tomorrow, and then hand it over to you for sale. Meister laughed and said, although he is young, his skills are really extraordinary. I believe that he will definitely be promoted by the headquarters in a short time. He is really an amazing young man. At this time, Kaya blinked her big eyes, and said in a childish voice, Eric big brother is the best, Kaya likes him the most. Father, mother, let's go find Eric big brother tomorrow, okay? Meister laughed, don't worry Kaya, we will take you there tomorrow. Kaya clapped her little hands and said with a smile, yes, yes, father, the best is the best. Kaya likes you so much. Windmill Village. At this time, the villagers were also discussing Eric. I didn't expect Sir Eric to be so powerful, and he caught 5 big pirates. It seems that what he said is true, under his jurisdiction, no pirates are allowed, why? Let's go to branch 16 tomorrow, this is an exciting time. Go together tomorrow, just take a look at Makino's tavern. That's right, Makino has been there for so many days, and the tavern should have started to open, so it's time to visit and join us. To be honest, Eric is really too powerful, the spirit of pirates will definitely be killed by him. I believe that under his leadership, we will be able to live a happy life, thank you Eric. Yes, Master Eric is our hope, bless him with all the best. At the same time, The three Luffy brothers also received the news. Sabo sighed and said, "This Eric is really amazing, it's the first time I've seen such a powerful person." Ace hummed, "Although he has caught so many pirates, I will not give up. My pirate dream will never stop." Luffy clicked his nose, nodded again and said, "Yes, we won't be pirates in East Blue by then, we'll go to other places so that he won't catch us." Sabo agreed. "He's so good, if we stay here in East Blue, we will definitely get caught, we have to go somewhere else, it's settled." East Blue, Shields Town. It belongs to the 153 branch. At this time, in a private house. Here is a man in his 30s, with a common appearance, who belongs to the category of people who are still on the street and won't attract Jiao attention. And his appearance is very suitable for being a spy, killer, etc., because it is not easy to be exposed. His real identity is the inspector assigned by the headquarters to East Blue, who can supervise any officer in East Blue, and has very powerful powers. Not only that, but his contact person is Marine Marshal Kong, and he does not need to report to others. Interesting, open trial of 5 pirates, and they are all capable persons. Porter looked at the message in his hand and muttered to himself. For Eric, he knows very well. Kong once called him and asked him to observe Eric more, and if he had any problems, he had to report them at any time. Porter is very clear that Marshal Kong attaches great importance to Eric and lists him as a seed player. Go and see tomorrow, I hope he won't disappoint me. Porter threw the paper in his hand into the stove and burned it completely. 11 o'clock at night, inside the dormitory. At this point, the light has gone out. Belmo leaned on Eric's shoulder and said softly, "Honey, in front of the office building, the words you said were really amazing, and many people showed admiration." Eric smiled and said, "Then what about you, have you ever shown such a gaze?" Belle said affectionately, "Of course, you are my role model, I really like you, husband." After finishing speaking, he lightly rubbed Eric's shoulder, very intimately. Makino said shyly in a low voice, "Honey, I love you too, you are my everything." Eric laughed, "Wives, your health is too poor, my husband has to start training you, quack quack. After all, I ate the bat fruit, my strength is so strong, if you are too weak, it will definitely not work." Belle Mel is very affectionate. "Husband, in this life you are my god, everything to me, I am willing to do whatever you ask me to do." Makino blushed, "Honey," Eric said in a soft voice, "you are all my good wives, I will love you well, we will be good in this life, there will be no quarrels or conflicts." Belle said lovingly, "Honey, you are really handsome, I have never seen someone so handsome like you. You are tall and strong, and you are still in a high position. You became a branch colonel at the age of 17. And you are gentle and polite, just like a gentleman." Belle hugged Eric, and said affectionately, "Honey, you are really excellent, I can't find any faults, I really love you, really." Eric said affectionately, "My wife, you are also very good. You have a very good figure, a delicate face, fair skin, and you want to share your husband's worries with all your heart. You are a very good woman, and my husband loves you very much." Immediately afterwards, Eric hugged Makino and said gently, "Makino, among the people I've met, you are the most suitable wife, do you know that?" Makino said shyly, "Honey, I'm not as good as you said." Eric ate the pear, and said vaguely, "Really, you exude the aura of a good wife and mother. I really like your temperament. It really attracts me. It's my honor to find a woman like you in this life, and I'm really content." Makino showed a happy smile, and said gently, "Husband, you are the best, the most outstanding man I have ever seen, it hurts." Time passed slowly. Eric lit a cigarette, smiled all over his face, and murmured, this kind of life, is what I want, and I have no regrets." Makino smiled softly, "Honey, I also want to live such a life, I feel so happy. Before, I only knew how to open a tavern, and I didn't feel any feelings at all. Now I understand that opening a tavern is not what I want to do the most. Being by your side is what makes me happiest. I have found my future goal." Eric stroked her hair, and said in a soft voice, "My wife, I have seen all your sacrifices, and I will treat you well in the future and promise to feed you well." Belle snorted, "Husband, you still say this, you really don't consider our feelings. You are really too strong. We are not your opponent at all. I'm afraid it will take a few more people to take you down. You bad guy, why are you so strong? It's too scary. Hearing what she said, Eric laughed heartily. Belle Mel, my husband is very happy with your compliment. You may not know that what a man likes most is to be affirmed by his own woman. What an honor it is, full of superiority and pride, this feeling is really refreshing, ha ha ha. Belle patted his big hand, and said angrily, don't be mischievous, it's okay to pretend that I'm afraid of you. Immediately afterwards, he said with a lot of emotion, I've heard people say before that men are not normally very strong, they can't beat women, and there is no way to let the water out of the blocked dam. But you have completely overturned my cognition. One person can be so strong that the water in the embankment flows cleanly, but you haven't stopped yet. You are really too strong. Eric laughed and said triumphantly, I don't want to do this either, but the body has been strengthened many times, you should just admit defeat obediently, quack quack. 9:10 in the morning. Inside the Colonel's office. Eric is looking at the file. This is the financial report written by Dea, which includes all the gold hidden in the office by Captain Mouse and the property raided by the house. Deja is indeed a talent. With him, my job is much easier. Eric was very satisfied and nodded secretly. At this time. Knock knock knock. Come in. Eric didn't even raise his head, and said something lightly. Colonel Eric. Meister shouted respectfully. Eric big brother. Kaya blinked her big eyes, and shouted sweetly in a crisp voice. Eric looked up, stood up and said with a smile, you guys are here too, sit down. Then, the four of them sat down and started making tea. Kaya said with a smile, Eric big brother, your office is so big. Eric poured tea for the three of them, and said softly, I'm a colonel, the office must be bigger. Oh, that's it. Kaya's eyes are wide open, she is very cute, like a little angel. At this time, Meister laughed and said, Colonel Eric, I really didn't expect that you took down so many capable users in one shot, it's really amazing. Eric waved his hand and said calmly, they're all small thieves, they're too weak, and it's only a matter of minutes to take them down. Lulia sighed. I can only say, Colonel Eric, you are really too strong, and it would be impossible for anyone else to do it. Meister echoed. These pirates have been doing evil for many years, but no one has dealt with them at all, which shows that these people's strength is extraordinary and they are not so easy to encircle and suppress. Eric smiled and said, okay, stop praising me all the time. Meister, I will publicly deprive them of the devil fruit later, and then give it to you for sale. Yes, Colonel Eric, Meister said respectfully. You are also busy with work, so we won't bother you much. Kaya hurriedly said, Eric big brother, we'll wait for you outside, come here quickly. Eric laughed, okay, you guys go there first, and our country will arrive soon. Then, the three walked out of the office. 9:55 in the morning. Belmo walked out of the office and came to Eric. Honey, it's almost time, shall we go there now? Eric nodded and said with a smile, let's go. Bellmeyer said with a smile, I just took a look, there are a lot of people here, it's very lively. Honey, wait a minute, let me tidy up your clothes for you. After finishing speaking, he helped Eric tidy up his collar, smiled and said, well, it's very good, very handsome. Eric smiled, my wife, you are so virtuous. Then, the two walked out of the office and walked to the training ground. Training course. At this time, there are already a sea of people here, and a lot of people have gathered here. When Eric appeared, it naturally caused bursts of cheers. Colonel Eric, Master Eric is here, he is really handsome. It's the first time I've met Master Eric, he's really handsome and extraordinary. Master Eric, good morning. For everyone's greeting, Eric nodded in response, giving people a friendly attitude. Soon, Eric came to the center of the training ground. Some tables and chairs have been set up here, and Eric is sitting in the middle. The time is up, bring those pirates up. Eric waved his hand and gave an order. Yes, Lord Eric. The soldiers responded respectfully, and escorted the 5 pirates up. At this time, Makino, Nami, and Nuo Chigao stood together and talked in a low voice. Master Eric is so handsome. Nuo Chigao sighed. Nami nodded his head and said in admiration, so many people are looking at him, it's so beautiful, so amazing. Makino looked at Eric, eyes full of love, and murmured, Eric, you are the most excellent man in this world. The other side. Kaya looked at Eric and said with admiration, Eric's big brother is really amazing. Kaya admires him the most. Lulia smiled, yes, he is indeed very excellent, the most outstanding talent in the entire East Blue is him. Meister smiled and said, it is rare to meet a talent like him in 100 years, and it is the first time I have seen such a powerful young man. At this time, in the crowd, an inconspicuous corner. Porter is among them, no one will find his abnormality, he is the most common people. This Eric is indeed very young, and he is really good-natured, calm, and he is worthy of being recognized by the marshal. Porter secretly sighed in his heart, and continued to watch the trial. Belle Mel stood aside, laying down a call for Eric at any time. She was very nervous at this time, after all, there were so many people gathered here. It's still my husband who is amazing. He has always been so calm. I can't do it anymore. Belle and Mel admired him immensely, and his love for Eric filled his heart. At this time, Eric said loudly, Guy, the Zone Mantis fruit-capable person, once killed 5 civilians and robbed many times. This person has committed a heinous crime and must be severely punished. Come on, bring him here. The soldiers quickly moved to bring Guy, who was kneeling on the ground, to Eric. Eric stood up and said loudly, Colonel Ben will take away the devil fruit from him now, and then hang him, as an example to others. After speaking, the right hand held the fruit, and the left hand became the hand of darkness, which was placed on Guile. What do you want to do? Gaillard, startled and angry, cried out. However, his body had already been held tightly by 2 soldiers, and he couldn't move at all. Immediately afterwards, he turned into black and was covered by darkness. This scene directly shocked everyone present. What is this? Oh my God, why did the Arison come out of darkness? Master Eric said he wanted to deprive devil fruit, is he doing this now? It's terrible, I didn't expect Colonel Eric to be so powerful. The power of darkness looks so evil, why do I feel this way? Meister said with a look of surprise. Colonel Eric said that he can deprive devil fruit, so is that the case? Lulia couldn't believe it and said, it's really scary that darkness can emerge. Kaya blinked her eyes wide and said curiously, Eric Big Brother's devil fruit is too scary. Nami frowned, and said in amazement, Eric Big Brother, he actually deprived devil fruit, so powerful. Nuo Chigao nodded her head, yeah, sure enough, there is nothing in this world that Eric Big Brother can't do. Makino said in admiration, his ability is indeed the strongest. He is the most powerful person I have ever met in my life. Porter's eyes flickered, his heart was filled with shock, and he thought to himself, I never thought that Eric would have such a terrifying ability. In this way, East Blue's pirate ability user. I'm afraid it will disappear soon. Quote, amazing, what a terrifying young man, if this news is reported, I believe he will be appointed soon. Porter has already made up his mind that when the trial is over, he will call Marshal Kong and say something good for Eric. After all, a talent like Eric really deserves the attention of Marine's top management and should sit in a higher position. At this time, the banana in Eric's hand suddenly turned green, and a strange spiral pattern appeared. Deja said in surprise, it's done, it's really successful. Belle murmured, sure enough, I knew my husband was the best, and he never let me down. At this time, Eric took away his left hand and said loudly, come on, this guy will be dragged down and hanged. What did you do to me? Guy said with great fear, my devil fruit, why did it disappear, how did you do it, how is it possible? However, Eric didn't respond to him at all, and the soldiers didn't give him time, they pulled him down directly. The people on the side covered the child's eyes one after another. Makino hurriedly said to Nami and Nuo Chigao, you two must not watch, or you will have nightmares at night. Hearing this, Nami and Nuo Chigao turned around quickly, not daring to look at the training ground. I don't look at it. What's so interesting about hanging? Nami snorted and said arrogantly. Nuo Chigao said in fear, I don't dare to watch it, it's too cruel, I'm afraid I'll be woken up at night. Same. Lulia also covered Kaya's eyes, and said softly, Kaya, you can't watch this, it's scary. Kaya hummed and said, Mother, don't worry, Kaya won't look at it, and Kaya is also afraid. Not for a while. Before Guy could utter a scream, he was hanged and passed away completely. The trial continues. The second pirate was escorted up. Under his fearful expression, devil fruit was stripped out again. Seeing the 2 devil fruits on the table, everyone couldn't keep calm and began to discuss. Colonel Eric, you are really amazing. It's terrible, it's actually a dog that snatches the devil's fruit. Is this the strength of Master Eric? No wonder he was able to take down these 5 big pirates, awesome. I wipe, deprive devil fruit, do you want to hang like this? Master Eric's ability can make him a lot of money, after all, devil fruit is priceless. It's awesome, haha, now, the pirates will definitely be scared to death, East Blue probably won't show any more pirates. 3-8. Yes, today's news has spread, and all the pirates will be scared to pee. Pirates were hanged one after another. The last one is Columbat. Eric announced directly. This person's devil fruit has already been deprived by me, and he will be hanged directly. The soldiers hurried forward and killed Columbat directly. As for what Eric said, everyone didn't ask or be curious. After all, Eric was able to deprive devil fruit, and deprived 4 of them, which has already made everyone numb. Finally, Eric stood up and said loudly, today's trial ends here. Starting today, I will intensify the attack on the pirates and do everything possible to make all the pirates in East Blue disappear. Everyone can send today's news to let the pirates know the determination and persistence of Colonel Ben. After finishing speaking, he put away the devil fruit and walked towards the office building. At this time, the crowd burst into warm applause. Colonel Eric, Master Eric, don't worry, I will let everyone know. Pirates, go to hell, with Lord Eric here, you are all finished, quack quack. It's so handsome, Mr. Eric's words are blown away. Male Gobi, if only I could be as excellent as Sir Eric. My role model. I really hope Lord Eric stays in East Blue, so that everyone's life and property can be protected. You can't be so selfish, Mr. Eric is so young, he must go to the headquarters. That's right, Lord Eric will definitely become a general. Then, the crowd dispersed. Porter also quietly left with the crowd. Eric, you should thank me, you will be promoted in a few days. Bolt is very satisfied, he believes that today's trial will definitely have a very huge effect. The sea area of East Blue is truly safe. And all the credit comes from Eric. Inside the office, at this time, there are only 2 people here. Belmo looked at Eric and said affectionately, honey, your performance just now was really great. I love you, I really love you. Eric lit a cigarette and said with a smile, my wife, pay attention to the occasion, this is an office. I see, there is no one here. Belle smiled and said, husband, I'm going back to work first, and I will do my best to help you. Eric nodded, and said softly, go, pay attention to rest. Belle agreed and walked towards the door. She had just left for a while when Meister knocked on the door. Eric smiled, come in. Meister said with a respectful attitude, Colonel Eric, your performance just now was really impeccable, and my blood boiled watching it. Eric laughed, I'm overwhelmed, it's not that exaggerated. After finishing speaking, pointing to the 4 devil fruits on the table, he said calmly, I took your space fruit earlier, let's use these 4 devil fruits to offset it. Hearing this, Meister quickly waved his hand and said quickly, Colonel Eric, this is not acceptable, that space fruit is the basis of our cooperation. Eric smiled and said, you're right, that's too much. The value of the fruit of space is not so high. I can't take your things empty-handed, so what kind of person am I? Okay, let's settle it like this. Meister was silent for a while, thought for a while and said, Master Eric, if you insist on giving it to me, then give me 2. I will buy the remaining 2 devil fruits at the market price. Eric smiled and said, okay, just like what you said, just kidding. Meister was in a good mood, and said with a smile, it's still the Colonel who is bold, vigorous and resolute, and isn't sloppy. Colonel Eric, I haven't prepared the money yet. I'll go back now and send it to you in the afternoon. Eric waved his hand and said indifferently, it's okay, just take it away, just bring the money over when you have time. Then, Meister put away the devil fruit and left the calendar office. Eric stood in front of the window, looking at the blue sky and white cloud outside, and thought to himself, with this sum of money, I can start buying a house. It will be more interesting to play games when we live in a big house. At the same time, Porter was already sitting on the passenger ship, heading for the small town of Shields, Stout. It's 2:30 in the afternoon. At this time, Porter had already returned to his room. He picked up the phone bug and dialed out. Blue blue blue. After a crisp ringtone, the phone was connected. Pult, call Ben, what's the matter? Marshal Kong said in a deep voice. Porter's attitude was extremely respectful, and he said quickly, Master Marshal, I need to report to you about Eric's situation. Oh, Colonel Eric. Marshal Kong suddenly became interested, and said seriously, tell me, what's wrong with Eric? Porter had already organized his language, and said directly, this morning, in the 16th branch, Eric publicly tried 5 pirates, and they were all capable. Chapter 71. I don't know how long it has been. Porter finally finished his report, waiting for Marshal Kong to speak. That's right, Colonel Eric, you really didn't disappoint me. After a while, Marshal Kong looked relieved and his tone was full of joy, which showed that he was in a good mood. Porter remained silent and didn't say much. As a supervisor, he only reports, listens more and speaks less, without any nonsense. At this time, Marshal Kong knocked on the desk, his eyes sparkled with wisdom, and he said in a deep voice, Colonel Eric has performed so well, and his potential is so good, I have to promote him. Okay, hang up the phone first, you continue to supervise East Blue, and report any situation at any time. Yes, Marshal, Porter said something respectfully. Then, the phone was hung up. Bolt sighed, Eric, you really got promoted. You are only 17 years old. You are really a terrible young man. Naval Headquarters, Marineford, inside the conference room. At this time, a daily meeting is being held here. Marshal Kong looked around the crowd and said with a smile, I have some good news to tell everyone. Hearing this, all the generals looked at him. Marshal Kong said with a smile, the supervisor of East Blue called me and reported the situation of Colonel Eric. He publicly tried the 5 pirates in the morning, and all of them were capable people, which severely deterred the atmosphere of pirates, made East Blue panic, and the property and safety of the people were greatly guaranteed. That's why I decided to promote Eric to Rear Admiral. I don't know what everyone thinks, so let's talk about it. Suddenly, the generals were all stunned, and everyone showed a surprised expression. Pelusalino tilted his mouth, and said with a strange voice, Your Majesty Marshal is so courageous, he was directly promoted from Colonel to Rear Admiral, how many levels have to be jumped, it's too scary. Sakazuki frowned and said seriously, Master Marshal, if you want to promote Colonel Eric, I will not object, but is it too much to be directly promoted to Rear Admiral? After all, he is only 17 years old. Aokiji said lazily, Colonel Eric is a capable young man. For such talents, we need to focus on training them. Sengoku's eyes flashed, and he said very seriously, a young man as excellent as Eric is rare in 100 years, and he really needs special treatment. I don't think there is any problem in being promoted to Rear Admiral. Garp laughed loudly, that little guy, Eric, really likes this old man. He was promoted to Rear Admiral, and this old man was the first to agree. After all, his strength has already reached the level of Rear Admiral, and he should be promoted. The goal of that little guy is to become Admiral, ha ha ha. Zephyr nodded, and agreed, a capable person really shouldn't be judged by age. I absolutely support being promoted to Rear Admiral. Crane Vice Admiral stood with his hands crossed in front of him, and said slowly, a devil fruit who can deprive people of abilities, and also learns hockey by himself, and wants to become an admiral, such a talent should also sit in the position of Rear Admiral. However, I feel that just in case, I still have to send someone over to check whether his strength has reached the level of Rear Admiral. After all, his strength value is indeed terrifying, but it does not mean that his actual combat experience has reached the level of Rear Admiral. Hearing what she said, everyone nodded in approval. Marshal Kong thought for a while, and said with a solemn expression, He Vice Admiral is right, some people will naturally be dissatisfied with promoting him to become Rear Admiral, so let's test his strength. Pausing for a moment, he turned his head to look at Pelusalino, and said in a deep voice, You are the fastest in here, you take the military uniform of Rear Admiral and go to East Blue. Hearing this, Pelusalino was stunned. He crossed his legs and said in a strange manner, Master Marshal, I seem to have caught a cold recently, and my health is not very good. Let me go to a place like East Blue. I'm afraid I won't be able to persist there. Regarding this, Marshal Kong already had a solution, and said solemnly, okay, I am very clear about your situation. Go to East Blue for a run, and you can rest for a week when you come back. Such a generous reward, I believe it will definitely cure your cold. Pelusolino didn't take Marshal Sora's teasing seriously at all. He tilted his mouth, pretending to be helpless, and said, Marshal Kong, I should be able to cure my cold in a week, so I'll do what I can and go to East Blue. Seeing his appearance, Sakazuki said coldly, Pelusolino, can you look like a soldier? Can you bargain for this matter? You are a disgrace to the soldier. Pelusolino shrugged his shoulders and said with a strange smile, Sakazuki, don't be so serious, we have been working together for so many years, it hurts my heart to say that. At this time, Crane Vice Admiral's eyes flickered, and he said wisely, Pelusolino, if possible, I hope you can bring a video phone bug to take pictures of the battle. Sengoku nodded and echoed, after all, it is a promotion to Rear Admiral. This is already a very high level of 020, so we must be more cautious. Marshal Kong knocked on the desk, and said in a deep voice, that's it, it's settled, take a picture of the battle, and we'll watch it together when we get back. Pelusolino lowered his head and cut his nails, and said casually, there are so many requirements, and you have to wear military uniforms, fight, and take pictures. What a chore. Garp laughed loudly and said, Pelusolino, otherwise you think that a week's vacation is really that easy to get, why? This guy is definitely the worst student I have ever taught. Zephyr was expressionless and indisputable. 4 p.m. East Blue, Branch 16. At this time, Meister came here again. This time, Kaya and Lulia didn't come with them. Colonel Eric, here are 200 million Baileys, please accept them. Meister put a black box in front of Eric respectfully. Eric smiled, Meister, I've said it all, why are you in such a hurry? Colonel Eric, you moved so fast and got 4 devil fruits in one go, so naturally I can't hold you back. Meister said respectfully, you are also busy with work, so I won't bother you. Eric nodded and said with a smile, walk slowly, you can come here for a while if you have time. Then, Meister stepped away from here. Not for a while. Bell Mel came to the office. Eric laughed and said, this is 200 million Baileys, we can go buy a house now. Bell Meyer's beautiful eyes lit up, and he said with a smile, honey, you are really amazing. A few days ago, you said that making money is not a problem, but now it will be realized immediately. I really admire you. Eric smirked, in that case, how are you going to reward me? Bell gave him a blank look, and said angrily, little girl has nothing to repay, so I can only treat you well at night. After finishing speaking, her face flushed and she looked more and more beautiful. Eric laughed and said happily, yes, this reward is the best. I like this reward very much. I looked at the time, it was 4:15. Eric said, Bell Mel, you go and call Makino, let's go out to look at the house later, while it's still early. Bell smiled and said excitedly, okay, I'll go to Makino right away, we can finally move to a new home, giggling. Without any hesitation, he hurriedly strode towards the door, feeling very happy. Then, Eric called Dea over. Master Eric, do you have anything to do with me? Deja stood respectfully. Eric smiled slightly and said, Dea, I'm going to buy a house, you can make arrangements for the real estate side, and I'll go to see the house later. Dea nodded, and said hastily, okay, I'll let you know. 4:30 in the afternoon. In front of the office building. At this time, Makino, Nami, and Nuo Chigao have all arrived here. Eric smiled and said, come on, let's go buy the house book. Nami clapped her little hands and said with a smile, okay, I can finally live in a big house, so happy. Belle rolled her eyes and said angrily, you little money addict, you like big houses. Nami was not convinced, and said angrily, Belle, Aunt, I think you are the one who wants to live in a big house the most. I didn't hear your conversation with Makino's sister. Nuo Chigao followed up and said, that's right, when Belle and Aunt said they wanted to buy a house, they had smiles on their faces. You want to live in a big house more than we do. Belle pointed at the two of them, and snorted, you two little guys, I'm ignoring you. Makino is gentle and generous, and said with a smile, I also want to live in a big house, everyone is the same. Everyone talked and laughed, and walked outside the branch. 5:30 in the afternoon. At this time, in a luxurious villa. Belle smiled all over his face, and said excitedly, "My dear, it's because of your identity that the process of buying a house is really too simple." Makino smiled and said, "My husband is a colonel after all, so the real estate side is naturally going all the way, and it will be handled as quickly as possible." Nami was running around in the villa, bouncing up and down and laughing loudly. "It's great, this will be my home from now on, I like it so much, hee hee hee." Then, Nami ran to the sofa and jumped up and down on the sofa, so happy. Nuo Chigao opened her small arms like an airplane. "Hoo hoo, I really like this place too, it's such a big house, and it looks so beautiful, la la la." Seeing the smiles on everyone's faces, Eric took a puff of cigarette silently, feeling very good. Belle Meyer said with a smile, "Especially the outside courtyard, we can take a walk there after dinner, it's very good to think about it." Makino smiled gently, "Sister, don't wait later, after we finish eating, we can take a walk in the courtyard. I'm going to cook first, because the family is hungry too." After speaking, he went to the kitchen. Belle Meyer said quickly, "Let me help you, take a look at the kitchen utensils by the way, and try to see if they work well." 6:30 in the evening. At this time, the courtyard outside the villa. Nami and Nuo Chigao were swinging on the swing and laughing happily. Nuo Chigao smiled and said, "That's great, I like it so much, you can also play on the swing," giggling. Nami snorted. "I said Nuo Chigao, don't swing so hard, my side is affected." The other side. The three of Eric were taking a walk, admiring the sunset. Makino said softly, "This kind of life is what I want. After eating, take a walk with the one you love and watch the sunset in the west. This kind of life is really pleasant." Eric lit a cigarette, smiled slightly and said, "Life is true when it's ordinary." Belle nodded and agreed. Yes, in the process of falling in love, there will definitely be more novelties, but in fact, the true meaning of life is only plain, and everything else is secondary. Turning to look at Eric, he said affectionately, "Actually, the most important thing is to be able to be with the person we like, so that no matter how hard or tiring we are, we will be happy in our hearts." 11 o'clock at night, inside the villa. At this time, Nami and Nuo Chigao had already rested early. After all, they are children, and they all go to sleep earlier. And in a certain room, Eric smiled and said, "Today is the first time we live in a big villa, so we have to celebrate it. And Belle Mel, you can say that you are in the office during the day, you should reward me well, you should not forget it." Belle Meyer said angrily, "My dear, you will think about these things." "I will definitely keep my word. I will definitely defeat you today." Eric laughed, "Okay, my wife, I didn't expect you to have such great courage, I admire you very much, I hope you can still be so tough later." Belle snorted, "Makino, we are united, I don't believe good Zhao I can't beat this guy." Makino said with a wry smile, "Sister, what you said is right, we are not his opponents together." "I don't know how long it has been." The room was quiet double. Eric lit a cigarette, said with a smirk, "Belle Mel, what did you say? You want to beat me, that's all." Belle Mel said bitterly, "You are really too strong, you are a monster, I give in, and I will never compete with you again, I admit defeat." Makino hurriedly said, "Husband, I also admit defeat, we are really not your opponent." "Ha ha ha." Eric laughed loudly, and said with a smile on his face, "Men, this is what I like to hear the most. This is the affirmation from my wife. Okay, it's late, go to bed early. A new day." At this time, Eric's public trial of the pirates has spread throughout East Blue. Countless pirates, civilians, and soldiers are discussing this matter. Eric, he's not giving pirates a chance to survive, Mahler Gobi. There is no way, who made him so strong, let's be civilians, not pirates. Master Eric is the strongest, the pirates are all finished now, ha ha ha. It is the greatest honor in my life to be able to serve under Lord Eric. Master Eric, he is East Blue's Dinghaishenzhen. With him, our East Blue will definitely be able to develop. That's right, East Blue is the weakest sea area, but Lord Eric will definitely change this situation, I believe he can do it. 3:30 in the afternoon. Marine Branch 16. Suddenly, a golden light flashed across the sky. Immediately afterwards, at the training ground, a person appeared. It was Pelusalino. The soldiers on the side saw one appearing out of thin air, and surrounded them one by one. When they saw his epaulets, they saluted quickly one by one. "Hello, Vice Admiral." Pelusolino tilted his head, and said in a strange manner, "You call Colonel Eric over and say that I have something to do with him." "Yes, Lord Vice Admiral." The soldiers said something respectfully, and hurried to the Ligong building. Pelusolino looked around and murmured to himself, "That's right, the branch has been under construction and plants have been planted. This guy Eric really enjoys it." Then, he put the two sets of clothes aside casually. Office building. Eric was correcting the documents when there was a knock on the door. "Come in." As soon as the soldier came in, he said anxiously, "Colonel Eric, a Vice Admiral is here from the headquarters. He is at the training ground. That person asked you to go over there." Hearing this, Eric raised his head and his eyes flashed. A thought flashed through his mind immediately. It is estimated that the matter of the trial has already been known by the headquarters. Looks like it's time for a promotion. Eric smiled and said, "Let's go." Then, Eric stepped out of the office. Belmel had already received the news, and asked curiously, "Eric, Vice Admiral from the headquarters is here, what's the matter?" Dea also rushed over after hearing the news, with a puzzled look on his face. Eric smiled slightly and said lightly, "The headquarters must know what I did in East Blue, and it is probably to praise me." Dea smiled quickly and said, "Colonel Eric, you may be promoted, I have to congratulate you in advance." Bellmeyer's beautiful eyes lit up, looked at Eric, and said in surprise, "Is this true?" "Is it right? I'll find out later." Eric waved his hand, laughed and walked towards the training ground. At this time, the entire branch already knew about it. Countless soldiers had already gathered at the training ground, and they started talking one after another. "You said, what is this Vice Admiral doing here? Did Colonel Eric commit a crime? Fart your mother. That is, Colonel Eric is such a good person, how could he commit crimes? Shut your crow's mouth. Master Eric must have performed so well, so Vice Admiral came here to reward him personally." "Yes, I think it must be so." Amidst the discussions among the soldiers, Eric finally came here. "Colonel Eric." The soldiers shouted respectfully when they saw him. Eric nodded, then said with a smile, "Pelusolino, why don't you stay at the headquarters? Well, what are you doing here with me?" Pelusolino put his hands in his trouser pockets, tilted his head and said, "It's been a while since I saw you, but your aura is getting stronger and stronger." Eric spread his hands and said calmly, "I can only say that my aptitude is so good that I don't need to practice much to become stronger." On the side, more and more people gathered to watch the conversation between the two of them. Even Makino and Nami have come here. Nami wrinkled her little nose, and said strangely, "What do you think this Vice Admiral is doing here?" Makino smiled gently, "Although I don't know what's going on, Eric will be fine." At this time, Pelusolino took out the mirror worm and put it aside. Eric's eyes flashed, and he said with a slight smile, "Pelusolino, you still plan to record the video, is this for the people in the headquarters to watch?" Pelusolino groaned strangely. Hey, Eric, you are too smart, it's not good." "Okay, I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you, the headquarters asked me to come over and test your strength. If your strength meets the requirements, you can be promoted to Rear Admiral today." Heard the words, Eric was not surprised, his eyes flickered for a while, and he said calmly, "It seems that my performance in East Blue has satisfied the headquarters, and I was directly promoted from the branch colonel to Rear Admiral." Pelusolino shrugged his shoulders, enviously said, "You were really scary, 17-year-old Rear Admiral, I've never heard of it, it's really scary." At this time, there was an exclamation from the side, and everyone was shocked. "Rear Admiral, OMG, Colonel Eric, you're going to be promoted to Rear Admiral. I wipe. Quote, Eric Rear Admiral, this. Too strong, Sir Eric, you are really terrifying. Awesome, it's blown up. 17-year-old Rear Admiral, this is a rhythm that scares people to death. I have already admired him so much that I knelt down." Dea was full of excitement, and murmured, "Master Eric, I knew that you were the best, you really did not disappoint me, I will always be by your side." Belle's beautiful eyes were filled with love. "Husband, you are indeed the most excellent, such a young Rear Admiral doesn't even exist in this department, I really love you so much." Makino was very surprised and said, "My husband is going to be promoted to Rear Admiral, this." Nami clapped his little hands and said with a smile, "Eric's big brother is going to become a general." "That's great." As expected of Nami's favorite big brother, he's really amazing. Nuo Chigao nodded her little head, adoring her. "Eric big brother, you are my idol, I want to learn from you." Same. Kuina was also shocked to ultimate, and said in disbelief, "Master Eric, you are going to become a Rear Admiral." Zoro was hit hard, and he said dejectedly, "At first, I wanted to surpass Eric, but now it seems that I have no hope, he is really too powerful." Koshiro was amazed. 17-year-old Rear Admiral, this has never happened in the history of Marine, Eric is really so strong. Field. Pelusalino continued to die, and said strangely, "Colonel Eric, I will stop talking nonsense, as long as you pass my test, the 2 sets of clothes over there will belong to you." Hearing this, Eric glanced at the clothes beside him, and saw a gold star on the shoulder strap, which was very dazzling. The rank of Rear Admiral has only 1 star and no bars. If it's Vice Admiral, it's 2 stars, and Admiral is 3 stars. Eric smiled lightly. "Pelusalino, you are very powerful, I have wanted to compete with you for a long time." "Oh, is that so? You seem to be really sure of yourself, what a frightful young man you are." Pelusalino tilted his head and said something strange. Eric was full of fighting spirit, he laughed and said, "If there is no problem, then start testing." Pelusalino took his hands out of his trouser pockets, and said with a strange smile, "Your dark fruit is indeed too weird and powerful, I dare not underestimate you." "Colonel Eric, as Vice Admiral, I am naturally embarrassed to attack first, so you go ahead and attack." Eric smiled slightly, and said proudly, "In this case, you should be ready." Dark water. As soon as the words fell, the dark left hand suddenly pushed out, facing Pelusalino in front. "The trick you used against Smoker. I really want to experience it." Pelusalino appeared to be careless on the surface, but in his heart he was already prepared. However, he still underestimated the horror of dark fruit. Hearing a bang, Pelusalino's whole body shook, as if his heart was about to jump out. "Terrible traction, no wonder Smoker lost to you." Pelusalino looked surprised, trying to resist the pull of dark fruit. However, he couldn't do it at all. With a bang, the person flew directly towards Eric. When he reacted, surprised to find that he has been caught by Eric. So, it's no wonder that Smoker can't react at all. This traction is really too strong. Pelusalino tilted his head, and at this moment, he was still a minister of death. Eric smiled slightly, and said lightly, "The traction of the dark fruit will not give the ability user time to react at all. This is the power of this devil fruit." Pelusalino didn't panic, and said strangely, "It seems that after being caught by you, you can't use the ability of devil fruit. I want to try it." Immediately afterwards, the sparkling fruit was launched to make it elemental. Immediately, he was surprised and said, Hey, it's really impossible to use the ability of the fruit, why should it be so scary?" Eric shrugged his shoulders and said with a smile, "If I don't have such ability, how can I become the Black Dragon Admiral, don't you think so?" After saying that, he clenched his fist with his right hand, covered it with lacquered black, and completed the arming. Pelusalino said with a strange smile, "Although the fruit ability cannot be used, Hockey can still use it, so there is no problem." The left hand covered armament Hockey and hit forward. Bang! When the fists of the two collided, there was a crisp, popping sound. Immediately afterwards, Pelusalino flew upside down, turning into a beam of gold beams in the air, and directly landed on the open space. Hey, it's fake," Pelusalino said in shock. "How can your armament Hockey be stronger than me?" There was a faint burning sensation in his left hand. Obviously, in this confrontation, Eric won. In other words, Eric's armament Hockey is stronger than him. Eric smiled slightly, and said calmly, "Pelusalino, you rely too much on devil fruit, and basically haven't tempered your body, so how strong is your Hockey?" I secretly sighed in my heart, the enhancement of the Phantom Beast Bat Fruit is really too great, and it has improved my armament Hockey a lot. After all, the time for Eric to practice Hockey is not very long. If it weren't for this divine grade fruit, his armament Hockey would not have been able to rise to intermediate level. Zuzuzu, only 17 years old, has such a strong armament Hockey, why don't you be so scary? Pelusolino tilted his mouth and said in a strange manner, your strength has definitely reached the level of Vice Admiral, this dress is yours. With a bang, the person turned into a beam of light and shot towards the sky. Hey, why don't you stay, keep fighting. Eric looked at the sky and laughed. I don't want to see you nasty guy. Pelusolino's voice came, and the man had disappeared without a trace. Suddenly, the audience burst into warm applause. OMG. Master Eric, you are so strong. Colonel Eric, no, it's Eric Rear Admiral. Wow, 17-year-old Rear Admiral, awesome class. It's so awesome, it's so awesome. Eric Rear Admiral. Eric Rear Admiral, you are my idol. Ah, don't push me, idiot. Dea was extremely excited, and hurried to Eric, and said respectfully, Alec Rear Admiral, congratulations on your promotion. Bellmeyer's beautiful eyes were full of love, and he said with a smile, my dear, you are too powerful, you will. Makino smiled gently. Eric, you have become a general, and I am proud of you. Eric big brother, you are awesome, Nami admires you the most. Nami waved his small fist, looking extremely excited. Nuochi Gao repeatedly nodded, admiringly said, Eric Rear Admiral, it's really nice to hear, Rear Admiral rank. Kuina's eyes were full of admiration, and she murmured, Master Eric, you are the most powerful person I have ever seen, Kuina will definitely not let you down. Zoro has been autistic, looking sluggish, I can't compare to Eric, he is too strong, no matter how I practice, I can't surpass him. Koshiro touched his head and said encouragingly, Zoro, a person like Eric is a monster, you don't need to compare with him. Your goal is to become the strongest swordsman in the world, not surpass him. Field. Eric smiled and took off his military uniform. Belle-Mel brought the clothes over long ago, and said softly, honey, put on the clothes and try them out. Then, Eric put on his general uniform. Immediately, the star above the epaulets shone brightly, and everyone saw it. Bellmeyer exclaimed, it's so bright, it really is different for Rear Admiral, this is a real general. Dea's eyes were full of fanaticism, filled with emotion, 1 star, this is the general, it's amazing. Makino nodded again and again, and said with a gentle smile, Eric, you look really handsome in this dress, pretty, really very pretty. Eric big brother is the most handsome man in the world. Nami and Nuo Chigao said loudly. As for the soldiers on the side, they all cast admiring gazes at Eric, as if they were fanatical fans. 10:40 in the evening. In a luxury villa, in a certain room. Eric laughed, I was promoted to Rear Admiral today, shouldn't I be rewarded? Belle-Mel said affectionately, honey, you are too powerful. Even if I risk my life today, I must make you happy. Makino said affectionately and tenderly, me too, I will definitely satisfy my husband. Okay, very good, as expected, the promotion to Rear Admiral means that you can get extra benefits, ha ha ha. I don't know how long it has been. Everything finally came to an end. Eric lit a cigarette and said with satisfaction, yes, I am very happy today, you performed very well. Bellmeyer's voice was fragile, and he said exhaustedly, my dear, we can't go on like this. The will start tomorrow, and I'll help you find an opponent, or it will really be over. Makino leaned on Eric's shoulder, exhausted, my sister is right, if this continues, I think something will happen in a few days. Eric smiled triumphantly. There's no way, who made the phantom beast bat fruit so powerful, I don't want to do that either. Belle-Mel wanted to roll his eyes, but he didn't have the strength at all, and whispered, you guy, you are just too bad, and this is also your biggest shortcoming. Who made you so strong, you killed people. Makino echoed. Indeed, this is my husband's biggest shortcoming, and it's a very fatal shortcoming. A new day. North Blue, Branch 166. At this time, in the colonel's office. Andre was correcting the document when suddenly the phone in front of him rang. Blue blue blue. Andre quickly connected the phone. Colonel Andre. Dea shouted in a respectful tone. Although he was no longer Andre's subordinate, he still maintained the original respect for this old boss. Andre smiled and said, Dea, why are you free to call me today? Dea was in a good mood and said excitedly, Colonel Andre, the reason I called you is to tell you something about Mr. Eric. Andre snorted, and asked curiously, hearing your joyful tone, could it be that Eric has been promoted? Dea said quickly, Yes, Colonel Andre, Sir Eric has been promoted, and he is now Rear Admiral. What? Andre was taken aback and stood up directly. Deja, what did you just say? Eric was promoted to Rear Admiral. Yes, Colonel Andre, Dea quickly explained. Yesterday, Vice Admiral was sent over from the headquarters. After the test, Sir Eric was promoted to Rear Admiral. Andre's eyes widened, and he couldn't believe it. How is this possible? Eric is only 17 years old, so young to become Rear Admiral. This. Dea said with a full face of admiration. Colonel Andre, I am also surprised, but Master Eric is so powerful, he is the most powerful young man in the world. Andre was silent for a while, full of emotions. Originally, Guillaume became Rear Admiral, and I thought she was very powerful. But now that Eric was promoted to Rear Admiral at the age of 17, such an achievement is absolutely unique in the history of Marine. Brilliant, what a frightful young man. Not for a while. The phone hung up. Afterwards, Andre announced the news to all the 166 branch owners. Suddenly, the branch directly exploded. OMG. Eric turned out to be a Rear Admiral. Shit. This is too awesome, I'll go. Eric's promotion is too fast, don't you want to be so scary and scare me to death? I have nothing to say about Sir Eric, the strongest man on the surface. Master Eric, I would like to call you the strongest. Rear Admiral, kill me. Similarly, the nearby towns also got the news. One by one they discussed heatedly. Among them, the most intense discussion is naturally Eric's hometown. The small town of Konig. Eric has become a Rear Admiral. An exclamation broke the originally peaceful town. What did you just say? Eric has become a Rear Admiral. You heard me right, the branch has sent out a message that Eric has already reached the rank of Rear Admiral. Rear Admiral, I'll wipe it off. Isn't it the Colonel? Why did he suddenly become Rear Admiral? My God. Above the Colonel, isn't it Commodore? Why did it become Rear Admiral? What's going on? Ghost knows what's going on, but Eric is really awesome, he's blown away. The ancestral graves are all smoking. Eric Rear Admiral, Suzuzu, the small town of Konig, there has never been such a powerful character, it's too strong. Should we make a statue of Eric Rear Admiral? Yes, if Eric Rear Admiral comes back and sees this statue, he will definitely be very happy. Eric Rear Admiral, you are the pride of Konig. North Blue, Branch 123. At this time, Crove was correcting the document. At this time, the phone bug on the desktop rang. Blue. Croft quickly connected the phone. Father, are you busy? Hina's tone was very excited, and she said with a smile. Croft was amiable. Girl, why do I feel that you are happy? Is there something wrong? Hina nodded and said hastily. Father, Eric has been promoted to Rear Admiral. What? Croft's eyes widened, shocked to the extreme. Hina, what did you just say? You said Eric was promoted to Rear Admiral. Father, you heard me right, I just got the news, and I haven't had time to call Eric, so I'll call you right away. Hina stood in the corner of the corridor, smiling all over her face, in a great mood. Crove was extremely surprised, but he still couldn't believe it, and murmured, Didn't you just become a colonel? Why did you suddenly get promoted to Rear Admiral? It's impossible. Hina smiled. Father, I couldn't believe it at first, I thought it was fake news. However, Hina has confirmed that Eric was indeed promoted to Rear Admiral, and Pelusolino Vice Admiral conferred the title in person, there can be no mistake. Why? Croft shook his head, smiled wryly and said, 17-year-old Rear Admiral, how can I believe this? It's too scary. Hina smiled. Father, many people, like you, don't believe that Eric was promoted to Rear Admiral. After all, the news is too shocking. Croft sighed, and said with emotion, I never thought that my son-in-law would be so outstanding. He is definitely the most outstanding young man in the world. No wonder he wants to become Admiral, he is really sure, it's amazing. South Blue, Branch 88. At this time, in the Colonel's office, Guillaume was processing the documents, concentrating on his work, and was very dedicated. Blue. Hearing the ringing of the phone bug, she quickly connected the phone. Guillaume, are you busy? Crane Vice Admiral's steady voice came over. Guillaume leaned on the chair, rubbed his forehead and said, Sister it's really not easy to be in charge. Crane Vice Admiral said with a faint smile. the things that need to be dealt with by the party in charge are very complicated, and naturally they are more difficult than cultivation. Guion sighed. Although I am very tired, in order to become Admiral, I have no choice but to persevere. Crane Vice Admiral said with emotion. Eric has done very well in this regard. This young man is not only a prodigy in cultivation, but also an expert in the administration, all-rounder. Hearing this, Guion froze for a moment, and asked in doubt, Sister He, what do you mean? Eric is doing very well. Guion, haven't you contacted him yet? Crane Vice Admiral asked. No, I'm so busy every day, how can I have the spare time to contact him? Guion frowned, and continued to ask, Sister He, what did Eric do to get such praise from you? Crane Vice Admiral was silent for a while before he said helplessly, Guion, the next news may hit your confidence. Yesterday, Eric was promoted to Rear Admiral, the youngest general in this department. What? Guion stood up in shock, with a look of horror on his face. Sister He, what did you say, became? Crane Vice Admiral. You heard me right, the headquarters held a meeting and unanimously agreed to let him be promoted to Rear Admiral. Guion May's eyes widened, she was shocked and said, how is this possible? He is only 17 years old. He is a genius, and he cannot be viewed from the perspective of common people. Crane Vice Admiral thought for a while and came to such a conclusion. Silence. Guion's face was full of astonishment, and he still couldn't react within days and hours. After a while, she sat down, leaning against the chair weakly, her face full of bitterness. When I was a Commodore, he was a little soldier. Today, I am Commodore, and he has come before me as the youngest Rear Admiral. Eric, why are you so powerful, why? Guion looked dazed, his eyes glazed over, and he lost all confidence in the blow. Crane Vice Admiral naturally expected this to happen, and said in a deep voice, Guion, don't be discouraged, Eric is still too young after all, if you want to become Admiral, you still need to face many tests, you still have a chance. Guion cheered up, and said seriously, Sister He, you were right, he is indeed more qualified than me, and his talent is stronger than mine, but he is still far from being an Admiral. Crane Vice Admiral smiled slightly, it's great that you understand this truth. The reason why I called you is that I hope you can work harder. Only under tremendous pressure will you burst out with stronger motivation. Okay, you are busy with work, so I won't bother you, please contact me if you have anything to do. After finishing speaking, Crane Vice Admiral hung up the phone. Guion put the phone bug on the desk, stepped to the window, and looked up at the blue sky white cloud. The sky is so blue, with white clouds fluttering, everything is so beautiful and fascinating. Eric, no wonder you dare to bet with me. It seems that you are really powerful. The dragon among men is the most powerful person I have ever met. However, I won't admit defeat easily, the one who wins the bet between you and me will definitely be me. Guion clenched her fists tightly, with a look of determination on her beautiful face. She is very tall, and when viewed from behind, she has a very good figure, and the military uniform sets off her heroic appearance, she is really cute. 5-page M. East Blue, Branch 16, inside the Rear Admiral office. At this moment, Eric lit a cigarette and was resting with his eyes closed, thinking about the next plan. Being promoted to Rear Admiral is already the limit that can be achieved at present. After all, I am still too young, no matter how good the record is, it is impossible to become Vice Admiral. In the next 3 years, I will definitely be in the position of Rear Admiral, and there is no room for promotion. Eric took a drag on his cigarette, his eyes flickering. At this time, blue blue blue, Eric did not hesitate and connected the phone. Honey, are you busy? Hina said something with a smile. Eric smiled slightly and said, Honey, don't you need to train, call me when you have time. Let me think about it, do you know the news of my promotion? Hina rolled her eyes and said angrily, You bad guy, you were promoted yesterday and you didn't even call me, you don't have me in your heart at all. Eric quickly explained, My wife, I was just promoted yesterday, and there are a lot of things, my husband, I really forgot. I was thinking about calling you again at night, but I didn't expect you to call here. It seems that we really have a good understanding. Hina snorted and said reproachfully, Okay, I'll forgive you this time. Hina knows that husband, you are very busy, Hina can understand. Pause for a moment, smile, husband, you are really great, 17-year-old Rear Admiral, now here in the headquarters, everyone is discussing your promotion. Every time I hear their shock, Hina is very happy, because you are my man, Hina is proud of you. Husband, Hina loves you so much, Hina really wants to see you now. Eric also said lovingly. My wife, my husband also misses you very much. After a while, my husband will go find you. It's time for us to play games together. After all, we haven't played for a long time. Hina said in a low voice, husband, I thought about it too, I'm really looking forward to it. Ha ha ha, Eric laughed, very happy. 6 p.m. West Rob Village. At this time, in the luxury villa, the three of Meister were walking in the courtyard. Lulia said with emotion, Eric is really amazing, at the age of 17, he has already been promoted to Rear Admiral. Meister nodded, and exclaimed, I have never seen such an amazing young man. This person is really a genius, and his future achievements are unimaginable. Kaya clapped her little hands, said with a smile, Eric's big brother is so good, Kaya likes him the most, in the future Kaya will also be a Marine and then follow Eric's big brother. Heard the words, Meest and Lulia looked at each other. Both of them nodded in agreement. After all, they agreed to let Kaya become Marine before, and now Eric becomes Rear Admiral, let alone. At the same time, the people in Zailuobu village are all discussing Eric, and everyone is full of admiration. Listening to the praise of the crowd, Usopp worshipped to the extreme. Eric has become a Rear Admiral. It's really amazing. If I can be as good as him, that would be great. No, I have to practice hard, I want to join Marine as soon as possible, and become a sea warrior like Eric. Have to say, because of Eric's promotion, the fate of many people has changed. Kaya is ready to join the Marine. Usopp too. Nami and Nokigao, that's not to mention. Windmill Village. Sabo was shocked and couldn't believe it and said, Eric is only 17 years old, and he has become a general, how is this possible? Luffy pinched his nose and asked doubtfully, is the general very powerful? Ace said speechlessly, Luffy, you idiot, you must be a good general, and that is the highest rank in the Marine. Luffy was taken aback, wow, is Eric so good? Sabo said with emotion, to be honest, a person as powerful as Eric is definitely not comparable to us. He is really terrible. Although I don't like him, it is undeniable that he is really too strong, and I can't surpass him in my life. Backquote. Ace sighed, dejected. Luffy yelled, then if we are pirates, we must not be in East Blue, or we may be caught by him, we have to choose to leave Eric. 9 p.m. Branch 16, inside the mansion. Eric smiled slightly and said, Bell, Makino, I'm going to go out later, and I'll be back before 11 o'clock. Makino nodded slightly, and asked softly, honey, where are you going? Eric, there is a woman waiting for me at the headquarters, I still have to go there. Bell yelled, and asked curiously, honey, why didn't I hear you mention it, who is she? Her name is Hina, and she was with me when I went to headquarters from North Blue. Eric smiled and said, she is now the captain of the headquarters, a very confident woman. Bell Meyer exclaimed, it turned out to be a captain, that's amazing. Makino continued, among the female Marines, being able to become a captain is indeed very strong. Eric laughed, okay, I'll go first, go early and return early. With a swoosh, the person has disappeared in place, traveling through the space. Tell me, how many women does my husband have outside? Bell touched his delicate chin and muttered to himself. Makino smiled gently. No matter how many women he has, he always loves us so much. That's true. Belmel smiled knowingly. Naval Headquarters. Dormitory for female soldiers. Hina is eating fruit. Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in the space, and Eric's figure quietly appeared. Husband. Hina stood up, with a face full of surprise, and flew over. Eric opened his arms and hugged her. Aren't you surprised? Eric smirked. Hina nodded and said with a smile on her face, it's a surprise, it's really sudden, Hina is so happy. Eric stroked her hair and took a serious look. Yes, I haven't seen it for a while, it's even more beautiful, and the scale has also changed, it seems that this is all due to me, ha ha ha. Hina murmured, husband, you are so amazing. You are only 17 years old. Now the headquarters are discussing your great achievements. Every time I hear them praise you, Hina is very happy, and my heart is as sweet as eating honey. Eric smiled slightly. My wife, I didn't come here this time to listen to your praise, you shouldn't reward me. Hina said tenderly. My husband, I must beat you today. This is my greatest reward. You will definitely like it. Courage is commendable, let's wait and see. Eric picked up Hina. After a long time, Eric lit a cigarette and said with a smile, as expected, you still lost, are you convinced? Hina said with a hoarse voice, weakly, I lost, you were really too good, just as strong as your strength. Ha ha ha, Eric laughed, triumphantly. Hina whispered, husband, you have already become Rear Admiral, but Hina is still so weak, do you look down on Hina? Eric touched her hair, and said softly, don't think too much, you will definitely become Vice Admiral in the future, trust me. Honey, I believe in you, Hina will work harder in cultivation. Hina has a serious face and is extremely serious. Eric stood up, smiled and said, Hina, I should go, I will come to see you every few days from now on. Hina was very reluctant, but she still gritted her teeth and said, husband, you can go. Although Hina misses you, she must not delay your work. Eric nodded and said with a smile, in 3 days, I will come over. You have to exercise well. You can't do it if you are too weak. You can't even have fun. Amidst the loud laughter, Eric traveled through the space and left. Hina snorted and murmured, you are a monster, how could Hina be your opponent? However, Hina also needs to work hard to exercise, so that her husband will be more satisfied. 2 months later, in a few days, it will be the Chinese New Year. A lot has changed for the East Blue in this time, come on. The number of pirates has been reduced a lot, it can be said to be rare. The lives of the people are getting better and better, with smiles on their faces. During this period of time, Eric found 3 devil fruits after continuous searching. Zone cicada fruit, zone frog fruit, zone insect fruit kernel. These 3 devil fruits were too bad, he didn't give them to the girls, but gave them to Meister, earning 300 million Baileys. At this time, in the office, Eric stood by the window, smoking silently. After this period of training, armament hockey finally broke through to advanced. Conquerors hockey, intermediate, and observation hockey, also promoted to intermediate. My current strength has definitely reached the Admiral level. At this time, Belle walked in, smiled and said, honey, the holiday starts tomorrow, do you have any plans? Eric turned around slowly, is there any place you want to go, I can take you out to play. Belle frowned, and said with a smile, husband, I have discussed with Makino, and we will make some barbecue at home tomorrow, what do you think? Okay, I'm fine, Eric smiled back. At this time, Dea walked through the office and said respectfully, Master Rear Admiral, are you still off work? Eric smiled and said, Dea, we are going to have a barbecue at home tomorrow, so you should come over too. Dea showed surprise, and quickly said, yes, Eric Rear Admiral. Eric then walked out of the office. At this time, the branch here is decorated with lanterns and festoons to welcome the arrival of the new year. Eric Rear Admiral. When the soldiers saw Eric, they were respectful one by one, and everyone's face was full of admiration. Eric nodded in response, his face calm. Bellmeyer looked at the surrounding environment and said with a smile, after more than 2 months, the flowers and plants in the branch have finally grown. Dea humbly said, all of this is due to Eric Rear Admiral. I saw the branch here, the walls have been refurbished, green plants can be seen everywhere, and the environment is quiet and elegant. At this time, Koshiro and others were already standing in front and waiting. Kuina said with a full face of admiration, Eric Rear Admiral, we are ready to go back. Eric nodded, and said with a slight smile, Kuina, during the Chinese New Year, you must not neglect your cultivation. Yes, Eric Rear Admiral. Kuina looked determined. Zoro said loudly, Eric, I will work hard to practice. Koshiro said gently, Eric, see you next year. Eric waved his hand, Happy New Year to everyone in advance, see you next year. Inside the villa, at this time, Eric and the others had finished their dinner and were taking a walk in the courtyard. Tomorrow is going to have a barbecue, so happy, hee hee hee. Nami ran around, laughing happily. Nuo Chigao was also very happy, and said with a smile, tomorrow I will barbecue by myself, and then I will give it to Eric's big brother. Makino said with a gentle smile. I'll make some fine wine tomorrow morning, and I can drink it in the afternoon. Bellmeyer praised, Sister, you were really amazing, the wine you mixed is really delicious. Eric echoed and said, Tomorrow Deja will come over, just let him have a taste. Don't worry, husband, leave it all to me. Makino is very gentle and has a very nice voice. Time flies. In a blink of an eye, the day of the new year came. 5-page M. Inside the villa. At this time, everyone has washed up. After all, on the day of Chinese New Year, people take a bath earlier. Eric took out 2 red envelopes, smiled slightly and said, Nami, this is for you. Nami froze for a moment, then asked in doubt, what is this? Eric said with a smile, this is lucky money, during Chinese New Year, children can receive red envelopes. Bellmeyer said in surprise, what kind of custom is this, why don't I know? Makino shook his head and said softly, I haven't heard of it either. Thank you Eric big brother. Nami's eyes lit up, and she said something with a smile. As a little money fan, money is what she likes most, and she smiles like a flower. Eric explained, for Chinese New Year, it's a must to make a fortune and give red envelopes to children. Come on, Nuochigao, this is not yours. Thank you Eric big brother, I like you the most. Nuochigao took the red envelope and pecked Eric on the cheek. Seeing this, Nami quickly said, oh, I also have to thank Eric big brother. After finishing speaking, he quickly imitated Nuochigao and pecked Eric on the cheek. Ha ha ha, AJED Eric laughed out loud, very happy. 12 o'clock at night, inside the room. At this time, the fire here is bright. Makino exclaimed, it's Chinese New Year, I'm 1 year older, I'm 19. Bellmel smiled sweetly, I'm already 28 years old. Eric was smoking a cigarette silently, his eyes flickering, and he murmured, it's the Chinese New Year, this is the first Chinese New Year, and there are 2 beautiful women by my side, so I have no regrets. Honey, what are you talking about? Makino blinked her beautiful eyes and asked curiously. Eric smiled slightly and said, I'm summing up the year, looking back on what I've done this year, and seeing if I've achieved the planned goals. Bellmel became interested, sat cross-legged, and said with a smile, Honey, how did you sum it up? I should be very satisfied. Eric took a breath and said calmly, the promotion to Rear Admiral has achieved my established goal, and this is the limit I can achieve at present. As for the situation in East Blue, it has also been greatly changed. The atmosphere of pirates has been completely killed, and the people are living a happy life. Overall, I am still very satisfied and can draw a successful conclusion. Heard the words. Bell touched his chin, smiled and said, Husband, you have neglected money. During this year, you not only bought a villa, but you also have 300 million Baileys at home, which is a huge sum of money. Eric laughed and said, I don't care about things like money at all, it can be ignored. Okay, today is Chinese New Year, you can go to bed later tonight, and then it's game time. Husband, let me tell you first, today I won't stop halfway, I have to play games all night. Immediately, Bellmel and Makino both exclaimed. Makino said fearfully, Honey, it's okay to play games, but don't play all night, how can your body bear it? Bellmeyer said angrily, You can play all night, how can we do it, unless you want us to die? Eric laughed, Okay, I'll talk about the rest later, let's start playing games quickly, ha ha ha. Honey, don't be so fierce. I'm going to die, I'm really going to die. It's Chinese New Year today, don't talk about dying, just keep playing, I haven't enjoyed myself yet. See Circle Calendar 1513. Branch 16, inside the office. Eric lit a cigarette, silently looking at the blue sky white cloud in front of the window. Knowledge color has been cultivated to advanced, so is conquerors. The bat fruit of the phantom beast has been developed to awaken, and my physical fitness has been greatly improved. With my current strength, I can definitely kill Admiral. 5 years have passed, and Marine's top management has made adjustments. Kong was promoted to become the commander-in-chief of the army. Sengoku becomes Marine Marshal. Sakazuki, Pelusolino, and Aokiji all became Admiral, with the same code name as in the previous life. At this time, Bellmel carried the box and walked in. She smiled and said, Husband, Meister sent over 100 million. At this time, Belle-Mel was already 33 years old, the most beautiful age, a ripe fruit. It is worth mentioning that she has eaten a devil fruit, Paramesha recovery fruit. Even if you are seriously injured, you can recover and resurrect with full blood in an instant. Maester is indeed an ideal partner. Eric smiled slightly and gave a very high evaluation. Belle nodded, smiled and said, "Honey, it's almost time, let's get off work." Walk. After Eric finished speaking, he walked towards the door. At this time, Dea walked over from the front and said respectfully, "Master Rear Admiral, are you going to get off work?" Eric patted him on the shoulder. "Dea, get off work when it's time to get off work, don't work overtime all the time, and pay more attention to your body." Dea looked very serious, and said seriously, "Master Rear Admiral, you value me so much, if I don't work harder, then I won't forgive myself." Eric smiled, "Okay, go get busy." "Yes," Dea responded and walked to his office. Bellmeyer said with a smile, "My husband, since he ate the Paramesha fruit, he has really admired you to the extreme, and he is definitely the most fanatical fan. Obviously, this devil fruit is Eric's masterpiece." Inside the villa. "We're back." Belle-Mel walked in and said something with a smile. Wearing an apron, Makino said gently, "I'm back, wash your hands and you can eat." In the past 5 years, she has become more and more beautiful, and she exudes the temperament of a good wife and mother, which is very attractive. And after Eric's tutoring, her figure is really amazing. At this time, Nami grinned and said, "Dinner is ready, everyone." The former little Lolita has grown into a little girl, and her personality has become more and more forthright. Not long, everyone had dinner and walked in the courtyard. Belle smiled and said, "Sister, did you practice today?" Makino nodded, very gentle, "Although I'm not interested in cultivation, my husband gave me such a precious devil fruit, I definitely can't let him down." Eric smiled slightly. The mongoose fruit of the zone phantom beast is in the form of a mongoose. This fruit is indeed very powerful. If you can develop it to ultimate, the armament haki of common will not be able to resist your attack. It turns out that when Makino uses the mongoose form, there will be 2 black tails with blue flames on them. Just like in Hokage, the shape of her way is very similar, it is a cat demon. 11 o'clock at night. Inside the room, Eric lit a cigarette and said with a smile, "Makino, since you ate this devil fruit, I am really satisfied, your strength has really become much stronger, countless times stronger than Belle-Mel." Quote. Makino leaned on his shoulder and said affectionately, "Husband, although I have become stronger, I am still no match for you. You are really amazing." As for Belle-Mel, he sighed deeply, and said blankly, "My air pressure fruit has no effect at all, and I am the weakest. If this continues, I will have no face to see you, I must become stronger, just do it." Don't underestimate yourself, your air pressure fruit is a very powerful devil fruit, it is not as simple as you imagined. Eric took a breath of his cigarette and said with a slight smile, "I don't care about you, I'm going to sleep." Belle-Mel was really sleepy and fell into sleep directly. The next day, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Naval Headquarters, Marineford, inside the conference room. At this time, a daily meeting is being held here. One thing will be finalized soon. Finally, Sengoku knocked on the desk and said in a deep voice, "Before the meeting is over, I have one last thing to mention." Immediately, the generals all looked over. Sengoku said solemnly, "Eric Rear Admiral has been in office for more than 5 years and has made outstanding achievements, which has brought about earth-shaking changes in East Blue. I propose that he be promoted to the rank of Vice Admiral and transferred back to the headquarters. If you have any suggestions, please tell me." Stunned. The audience was in shock. Kizaru tilted his mouth and said in a strange manner, "He's promoted to Vice Admiral. He's only 23 years old. Why don't you be so scary?" Akainu frowned, and said solemnly, "Eric Rear Admiral, his performance in East Blue is indeed very good, but it is really too much to be promoted to Vice Admiral at this age." 0. Aokiji yawned, and said lazily, "The strength meets the requirements, and the results are so outstanding, there is no reason not to be promoted." Garp laughed loudly. "The situation in East Blue, the old man is the most clear, now mentioning that kid Eric, the people all give a thumbs up, everyone admires it." At this time, Staff Officer Crane coughed. In an instant, everyone turned their attention to her. The generals admired this wise old man very much. Even someone as strong as Akainu respects her. The old man feels that it is indeed time to promote Eric. Staff officer, he crossed his hands in front of him, and said slowly, his strength has already reached the level of Vice Admiral, and he is not even very far away from Admiral. And his achievements in the past 5 years are obvious to all, making East Blue from the weakest sea area to the strongest in the world. In addition, he has a calm mind. Although he is a genius, he doesn't have any pride. No matter how you look at it, Eric meets the conditions for promotion. As for age, it can be completely ignored. Silence. The audience fell silent. Obviously, what Staff Officer Crane said carried a lot of weight. Everyone had to seriously think about it. After a while, Stallo Berry said with a blank face, the Chief of Staff is right. Although Eric is young, he has a calm personality. He is not an impetuous young man. N. Huo Shaoshan took a puff of his cigarette and smiled gently. 23-year-old Vice Admiral is really surprising, but I can't find any reason to object. The T-Dolphin crossed its legs and said, Vice Admiral is already a high-level figure in Marine, so I have to talk to him. What do you think? If everyone has no opinion, I will report it to the 5 adults later. Sengoku said with a solemn expression, I can take full responsibility for the promotion of Rear Admiral, just a word. But Vice Admiral is different, it must be approved by the higher-ups. Garp laughed loudly, okay, there's nothing to discuss about this matter, Eric is a genius, and that explains everything. Kizaru tilted his mouth, looked like he was dying, and said, 697, slowly, I was promoted to Rear Admiral at the age of 17, and became Vice Admiral at the age of 23, what a scary young man, scary to death. Akainu didn't continue to speak, he was acquiescing to what Staff Officer Crane said. As the leader of the Hawk faction, if he doesn't speak, the rest of the Hawk faction will naturally be silent. Dao Boyan, Ghost Spider and the others all died silently. At this time, Sengoku looked around and said in a deep voice, in this case, this matter is finalized, the meeting is over. After finishing speaking, he took the lead in walking towards the door. Shrine, Maria, inside the luxurious palace. At this time, there are only 5 people here, and they are the highest authority, the 5 elders. Sa Tansheng sat on the sofa, with a cane in his hands, and said seriously, what do you think of what Sengoku said? The bald-headed 5 elders was holding a treasured sword, with a stern face, just 23 years old, he is still too young to be qualified for the position of Vice Admiral. The blonde 5 elders stood in front of the window, put his hands in his trouser pockets, and said lightly, dark fruit, what a magical devil fruit, it can actually pull people with abilities and make 5 people unable to animate calendars. The long-bearded 5 elders stroked his beard, the most important thing is to be able to eat multiple devil fruits. Mustache 5 elders, with his hands crossed on his knees, his voice was calm and powerful, very interesting young man, he is a talent. Boom boom boom, Satan knocked on the floor with his cane, making a heavy sound. Marine has held a meeting and agreed to promote Eric to Vice Admiral. The old man believes that if Eric grows up, he can deter the pirates in New World. After all, he is the nemesis of all ability users. For this reason, he should be given the position of Vice Admiral. Immediately, the palace fell into silence. The 5 old guys are very good at nourishing energy, they are not in a hurry or impatient when encountering things, and they can always maintain the clearest mind. After a while, 5 elders, with long beards, said in a calm tone, a Vice Admiral is not worth our time to discuss, so let's settle it. Mustache 5 elders nodded, if he was promoted to Admiral, let's discuss it then. Quote. Blonde 5 elders, minority is majority, you 3 have agreed, so I don't need to say my point. When the 5 elders were discussing things, in order to avoid fierce quarrels, they made this decision. Over the years, no matter what kind of things they encountered, they were able to discuss calmly, which is due to this. The same day, 5-page M. Marine Branch 16. Eric is looking at the file. Suddenly, the phone buzzed. Blue blue blue. Eric picked up the phone. Is that Eric? A thick voice came from the opposite side. Eric's eyes flashed, and he smiled slightly and said, Marshal Sengoku, I'm Eric. Sengoku said earnestly, Eric, the headquarters has made a decision. In view of your excellent performance, you were promoted to Vice Admiral. Why? For this, Eric had already made mental preparations, and said calmly, "Got it, Marshal Sengoku." This time, Sengoku was stunned. "Ah," Sengoku said speechlessly. "Eric, why aren't you surprised at all?" Eric smiled. "Marshal Sengoku, I haven't been promoted for 5 years, what a long time." Sengoku smiled wryly. "You fool, really?" After a pause, he said with a solemn expression, "Eric, do you understand what the 23-year-old Vice Admiral represents? This is the first of its kind for Marine, which has never happened before." Eric smiled and said, "Marshal Sengoku, I know all this, but my strength has already reached the level of Vice Admiral. How can I stay in the position of Rear Admiral forever?" This, Sengoku was at a loss for words, and said helplessly, "Well, you are indeed a monster, I have nothing to say. Next, you will hand over the work and go to the headquarters to report early." At this time, Eric said very seriously, "Marshal Sengoku, I recommend my assistant Daya to be the next colonel of the 16th branch." Sengoku groaned and asked, "Who is this Daya who is so valued by you?" Eric, "Marshal Sengoku, Daya understands the situation of East Blue very well. After I leave, he will be able to execute my next plan very well and ensure that East Blue has always been under high development." It was quiet for a while. Sengoku knocked on the desk and said in a deep voice, "Originally, I have already found the next candidate. Since you strongly recommend this person, then follow your plan. After all, East Blue's current situation is very prosperous. This is hard-won and cannot be destroyed by the next generation. Okay, hurry up and arrange your work. I'll wait for your arrival at the headquarters. Don't make me wait too long." After finishing speaking, he hung up the phone directly. Then, Eric called Daya and Belmel to the office. "Eric, Rear Admiral, what do you want from me?" Daya's attitude is as humble as ever. Eric threw him a cigarette, lit it, and said with a smile, "Daya, Marshal Sengoku just called and asked me to go to the headquarters to report." Shock. In an instant, both of them were stunned. Belle's eyes widened, and he said with surprise, "Honey, you've been promoted to Vice Admiral." Eric smiled and nodded. "My God," Belmel exclaimed, and quickly threw himself into Eric's arms, saying excitedly, "That's great, husband, you are so amazing." After he finished speaking, he frantically pecked at Eric's face. Daya was shocked, and murmured, "Vice Admiral, Mr. Eric has been promoted to Vice Admiral. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more."